All right.
You're looking good today, Ian.
All right. So is that the book?
That was the book.
That
So
was the book.
all
Yeah.
right. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Marketing Guides for Small Business podcast. I'm Paul, and I'm joined by Ken and Ian, and together we're your marketing guide. So we talk a lot about strategy and how important it is for marketing and local search, but a lot of small businesses, they either don't bother with it, maybe they're not aware of it, or they want to just skip that step. But it's a really important thing to do. So we're going to talk about the strategy first approach in this episode. So speaking of strategy first, Ken, what exactly does, when we talk about strategy first, what does that mean as it relates to content, both content and marketing strategy itself?
Yeah. So first, I'm going to start by saying what's not marketing strategy, and that is trial and error. Um, you know, pursuing the marketing flavor of the month, the shiny object syndrome, if you will. Those are things that are they may not be recipes for disaster because you may get lucky. You may get lucky, but you're probably going to get a lot of frustration, and you're certainly not going to get the results that you were hoping for. So the whole idea behind marketing strategy first is, marketing ultimately is it's most effective when you have spent time targeting. And by targeting, I don't mean necessarily just audience. I mean messaging. I mean, the channels that you should explore, a high level survey of the tactics, a review of what your competitors are doing. We're not making those decisions yet, but you need to define what the important success criteria are and how your business can succeed. And so, when we talk about how marketing strategy really relates to content marketing, it's really hard to create the right content if you haven't thought through and worked on the strategy. You're going to be writing content and look, content's not easy and it's not cheap. Otherwise, everybody'd be doing it, right? I mean, so, and even for the people who do it, 90% of them are not doing it right. They are writing content that they think is important. They don't know that it's important. They just think that, and they're not putting themselves in the customer's shoes. So what you need to do from a marketing strategy perspective to really tie in how content fits into that, I think, as duct tape marketers is using this concept called the marketing hourglass, focusing on the customer's buyer's journey. What content do you need to have in place as people move through that buyer's journey, through the different stages of the marketing hourglass, if you will, the know, like, trust, try, buy, repeat, and refer. So you definitely need to work on that. You definitely need to think about who are the people who you want consuming your content. It doesn't always have to be customers. There are reasons why you might want to have strategic partners consume some content. You need to think about all of this stuff. And it goes into the design of your overall marketing plan that you're going to execute over the course of several months, hopefully several years, obviously coming back and tweaking the strategy as you need to. And then, you've got to focus on your differentiation. Why would people buy from you as opposed to a competitor? And really work on your messaging. So, I mean, there's a lot there. I think the key thing is just, what content do you need to create at what stage of the marketing hourglass or the buyer's journey to help them make the decision? Because ultimately we're all doing this to get people to take a call to action, which is probably booking an appointment, and ultimately becoming a paying customer. So, yeah, I think it's critically important. Ian, you probably have a lot more to add to that.
Yeah, I'll wait until Paul has a good follow-up question, and I think it follows in well and adds to this topic. So I'll wait for him to guide us through this part.
All right.
Well, so we talk a lot on this podcast about strategy and tactics and how it's a mistake to put tactics before strategy. So why is that a problem, and what's the difference between strategy and tactics?
Yeah, and I think Ken covered some of this for sure. This is almost like a step back. Let's talk about the difference. And I think this is a really misunderstood part of not just marketing, but business in general, or even just how things work, strategy versus tactics. So one of the questions I often ask people is, what tactics should you be employing to effectively market your business, right? And the reason I ask that question is it's actually a leading question, because you can't answer that question unless you've developed a strategic marketing plan, right? You just what Ken was saying, you're going to be chasing after the latest shiny object of marketing, or a trending object, or what other people say is successful. Excuse me. But marketing success does not happen by accident. Ken said essentially you could get struck by lightning from a marketing perspective. But is that what you're going to hinge the success of your business on? No, you wouldn't. That doesn't make any sense. So don't do that. So let's take a step back. Let's look at what strategy is. So strategy refers to the overall plan you have, the approach you're going to take in order to achieve the specific objectives or goals you have for your business, just like what Ken said. But it focuses on the big picture. It provides high-level direction for your organization, but then it also translates down to the individuals working on behalf of your business. It involves analyzing the current situation of your business, defining the objectives, identifying the resources available to you, determining the best course of action, and it sets the framework. I often equate having a strategic marketing plan as a filter or a framework, because one of the questions that pops up a lot with clients that we're working with is they hear buzz in their industry about something in particular. So right now, a good example of that is using ChatGPT to create content. But the framework is your marketing plan. If you don't have a marketing plan to guide, first of all, what you would do with ChatGPT to create content, but also a framework to tell you, here are the things we should be creating content on, and here's how we should be going about it because it aligns with our objectives and our ideal customers or clients. Without that, you're going to be using up time, resources, and energy and money for things that aren't going to move the needle. So strategy is super, super important. And then tactics, I think we all gravitate towards tactics because these are far more tangible things. These are where the rubber meets the road. And tactics are the specific actions or techniques that you're going to employ as a business to execute the strategy to achieve those desired outcomes. They're detailed, they're practical, they're focused on the implementation of the strategy. They're usually short-term focused versus the strategy, which is long-term focused. There's specific steps or tools or methods to accomplish those strategic goals. And they're very actionable. So an example is if your strategic marketing plan suggests that you are going to use the strategy as part of your plan of search engine optimization to attract more customers, underneath that are a whole bunch of tactics. SEO is not a one element strategy. It has a host of tactics below it, like keyword research, like optimizing your website, like directory citations, like generating reviews, like it goes on and on and on. And those individual tactics help you accomplish the larger strategy. But hopefully that helps people, because I know a lot of people get hung up on this. I hear it all the time, especially from industries that are chock full of strategy noise. And what I mean by that is like the real estate industry, there's all this buzz about here's the strategy, here's the silver bullet strategy that's going to help you attract more buyers and sellers of homes so that you can make lots of money and be successful. The problem with that is most of those strategies are they could be a strategy, but most often they're a tactic. And most often they have no strategic overarching plan to help them be executed or to know if you're being successful. And then, of course, you run into the challenge of, everybody's doing the same thing, right? So it's not actually guided by a unique selling proposition that you have, which would be developed in your strategic marketing plan. So that was a long answer, but I think it's a really important question, because we run into it so often. Ken, Paul, you run into that a lot?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I think you're spot on. I think it's easy for people to rush to tactics. That's mainly what they're sold. So when anybody who claims that they're a marketing person contacts you, they're selling tactics 90% of the time, and they're going to sell what's good for them, not what's good for you necessarily. It could be great for you. I'm not saying it's not, but but you're taking a chance. You're relying completely 100% on them, on a single tactically driven approach. And like Ian said, this is your business. Do you really, the other thing is, nobody takes the time to really think through a marketing budget. We've talked about this, in some recent episodes. If you're going to make an investment in a physical place of business, why aren't you making an equivalent investment in your online presence and your overall marketing presence, digitally and offline? Most it's a shame because I've been in a lot of business startup kinds of classes or consultations, and they'll always talk about marketing tactics, but they never talk about marketing budget and marketing strategy. And really, it is the system that makes your business run. And it's criminal that people skip this step when they're providing advice and recommendations to you.
And this isn't in Paul's questions that he's prepared for us, but I see this all the time where when we implement a strategic marketing plan for clients and execute it for them, meaning we're doing the thinking and the doing for them, right? The strategy and the tactics, we always outperform whoever they had previously, whether it was another marketing agency or multiple vendors. Do you guys find that as well?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and Ian, something you just said about multiple vendors, that can be a mistake too, because you have a business that they have this person doing something and some other person doing something and somebody else doing something, and communication can be difficult, and it can cause problems because nothing exists in a silo. In a way it used to, but not anymore. So when you have multiple vendors doing different things, you're not going to get that synergy, if you will.
Yeah. Marketing, I use this phrase a lot. Ian, you're probably going to guess what it is, but it's amplification and it's force multiplication. So when you're starting from a position of strategy, you have the opportunity to get those force multipliers. So everything that you're doing, if it's an integrated part of a marketing strategy and the execution, you have the opportunity for that force multiplication. And if you're just relying on doing a tactic here, I send out a postcard. Okay, I got some results, but not what I wanted. So next month, I'm going to try a Facebook ad campaign. I'm going to run it for a month. Okay, well, I didn't get the results I wanted there. You're not getting any amplification with that. You're spending money on a tactic. There's no investment in your business. You're not gaining anything. You're not getting ahead. You're just spending money, writing checks, instead of building that foundation to grow your business.
Yeah, one of the other things is and I totally understand people's feelings about this, right? Tactics feel like immediate action. I'm doing something to help my business. The problem is that without that strategic part, you're probably not doing the right activities. But the other kind of barrier I hear from small business owners is I just need leads now, right? I don't have time for strategy. And I think just as far as level setting for people, making sure we're all on the same page, like as marketing consultants, we're not suggesting that you take 6 months to develop a marketing strategy. We're suggesting, you hire somebody that can help you do this. And, the way we do it is we try to, we have a systematic approach to this, right? And so we within 3 to 4 weeks, usually we have a marketing strategy in place, and we've already started doing some implementation for clients. So it's rapid deployment. It's using experts to help guide you. And if you don't have time or money for that, if you're just starting out, then grab a great book like Donald Miller's Marketing Made Simple, grab Duct Tape Marketing, grab Content Marketing for Local Search. These kinds of books will help guide you so that you can at least strategically do the right things.
Yeah.
So, Ken, when we talk about this strategy first approach, there's like 3 main concepts, if you will, that go into this strategy first approach. Can you talk about those a little bit?
Yeah. So I mentioned at the beginning, marketing is going to be most effective when you can target. I don't know of any business that has the money to make the investment to market to everybody on the planet. And yet that's even everybody in a metropolitan area, and yet that's the way most people kind of start out. So you got to think about your targeting. And the first way to do that is to think about who is your ideal client. It's not something you should skip. You really want to think this through. You definitely want to focus on what makes you different. What are your points of differentiation? Donald Miller of StoryBrand talks about the grunt test. When you pull up somebody's website in 5 seconds or less, really it's 3 seconds or less, if somebody can't grunt back what the business does and the problem that they solve, you're probably going to lose them, because there are so many choices that are out there. It's so easy to find other businesses. Now if you're fortunate enough to be in a position where you're already showing up on the Google Map results, which can happen frustratingly sometimes without a whole lot of marketing strategy or investment, and somebody has an emergency need, you might be okay. But again, why are you going to leave that to chance? And I would do everything I could to solidify my position there. So so definitely think about your core messaging. Focus on the problems that you solve for your clients. What questions are they asking? Another thing that I think people miss out on when it comes to targeting is, what product or service do they really want to lead with? A lot of businesses are like, oh, cool, I can go do this. I just hired a guy who brings this capability to do this, that, or the other. And so now you've distracted yourself. You've pulled away from the focus. You're trying to sell a solution. You're not making a proper investment. You're not even seeing if people want to buy it. It's not like a field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. Not necessarily, probably not actually. So you also have to think about, what products or services do you offer? A great example of this is, plumbers. There are dozens and dozens of things that plumbers can do. They can install hot water heaters. They can do emergency plumbing services. They can do drain repairs. They can do kitchen bath remodel. Well, what's your focus? What is the thing that you really want to focus on, and who is that ideal customer that's going to buy that product or service? If you're not thinking about that, you're going to be wasting a lot of money and actually watering down almost all of your marketing results as a result. So that's critically important. And then I think, marketing ultimately is about transformation. So how do you put together stories of transformation? How do you get your ideal customers to visualize, here's the pain I'm having now, here's the situation I'm at now, and how are they going to be able to work with you and get to that end state that they want to accomplish? That's really how you need to think about the messaging and the language, and it's all driven around, what questions are people asking, what problems are they describing. You may have the solution. In some cases it may be really obvious. I mean, if you have a flooded, or if you have an overflowing toilet, 90% or more, probably 99% of people know that they need to call a plumber. But maybe you don't have something that's that obvious. Maybe, non-surgical weight loss. I mean, somebody might know that they need to lose weight, that they want to lose weight. They may not know the options that are available. So you need to think about creating educational content, to maybe help guide somebody through their journey, to help them come to the conclusion, okay, this is somebody that I need to be talking to because this sounds like a viable solution for me. That doesn't just happen by chance. So you've got to specify and identify and target all of these different things.
So, Ian, Ken talked about ideal client, and we like to joke about your ideal client isn't necessarily anybody with a bank account. But so how would a small business owner or a small business, how would they go about finding their ideal client?
Yeah, I think if you already have a business, like if it not a startup, I mean, like if you've been around for a little while, you actually have tremendous amounts of data at your disposal that you can leverage from your existing customers, excuse me, and from your existing team. So one of the things we do during our strategy first blueprint, and this is going to look really, really technical, it's a 4-square quadrant. And what we do on there is in the upper right corner, we do most profitable. And in the bottom right corner, we do less profitable. On the left-hand side, we define it in a couple different ways, but one might be worst customers to work with, best customers to work with, or we enjoy working with these guys, we don't enjoy working with these guys, or we love doing this kind of work, but we don't love doing this kind of work. And just mapping them out on this matrix. What we find is that really quickly helps people visually see. You can do this on a wall, with Post-it notes, and actually put the names of customers, because like if you sat down with your team right now and said, who are our very best customers that we love to work with and why? And just real quick on a Post-it note, do as many as you think is appropriate. Put them up in that upper right, or to the right. Then ask, like, how profitable are those customers? And look at the ones that are both a joy to work with. You love doing that type of work. You love those customers, and they are profitable. Those are the ones that you want to define who they are. So you want to look at common traits in those people. And to me, that is the gold standard, because it's using your own data in your own local geography, in your own business, to define who your most ideal customers are. Because just as you were saying earlier, everybody that breathes is not a great customer. I hear it all the time in like the dental industry. Well, whoever has teeth is my ideal customer. Well, no, it's the people without teeth too, but it's that's not the point. Because as Ken was saying, you also need to look at this, and that's why I really like the aspect in that matrix is if you also look at which services or which customers you love to serve, oftentimes you can start to see very clearly, oh, these are not only the most profitable customers, but they're all in kind of a similar type of service. If you have a fairly substantial service offering, like Ken was talking about plumbers, it's a pretty substantial service offering. But if the ones you love are, I don't know, drain cleaning, right? Or renovating, putting in plumbing for new renovations, right? You start to define who these people are and who are most profitable. So always start with your own data. You can also do, market research. You can start to look around at, what's the income levels in your areas? Are people commuters versus non-commuter? I mean, there's so much information that you can do, but always start with who your ideal customers are that you already have, because you can start to expand that if you want, or keep it the same, but that's the best place to start. You can also look at competitors. There's always ways to find out competitive intelligence, and just find out, well, who do our competitors love to work with? Who are their ideal customers? Because sometimes you might want to compete for those same customers. Other times you might want to pivot your business into a more unique spot in that industry, so you're not actually competing for those exact same customers as well. But then the next thing I would suggest is building out buyer personas. And this doesn't need to be, back in the day in the corporate world, we used to spend months defining buyer personas. And that's not what I'm suggesting here. I'm suggesting creating a one-pager about what these ideal customers look like. Doing no more than 3, probably. You don't, to get started, you probably don't need more than 3 ideal customers, personas to go after. But in these, you would want to understand their demographics, the behaviors that drive them, their pain points, their goals, the challenges, and their motivations, right? You want to be able to kind of get in their head of, what's motivating them to look for my services. You can ask your existing customers for feedback. Obviously, that's a great place to start too, about how do our customers perceive us? There's lots of other kind of online techniques of, checking out social media. Nextdoor is probably a pretty popular one right now, where it's neighborhood based, where you can see people's conversations about different services in the area and what people's experiences are like. And you can uncover some unique opportunities there as well. But I always start with our own data in the business and our own team, because your own team, whether they're sales, customer service, whatever it might be, or service delivery, they're going to have a unique viewpoint of what an ideal customer is for your business. And you should be leveraging that for sure.
So let me throw you a curveball here. What if you're a startup and you don't have this data?
Yeah, where I would start is I would start with your most profitable service and your most likely ideal customers. So meaning, if I'm a new plumber in the area, I can certainly go after clogged toilets, clogged drains, that kind of stuff. But you could also say, well, just looking at the numbers of what I perceive in the industry, because most plumbers who are starting, and just using that as an example, right? A startup plumbing service has probably worked in the industry for a while. They're not usually new grads. They've already developed some experience in that. So they know what the most profitable services are, and they know what level of housing or affluence, or whether it's commercial versus residential, right? They probably have a good idea. So go with your knowledge, start there, track how it works out, right? And then start to use the data and leverage that appropriately. I think there's a lot of good resources out there too that will help. Like we've talked about with Donald Miller's books, John Jantz's book, Duct Tape Marketing. Those are all really good because they will help you determine who your ideal customers are. But you just use your best intelligence based on what you know about the industry, what you know about the geographical area, and start doing it and then track. I think that's how I would approach that. Ken, any other thoughts on startups?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, many startups, they don't have enough money on hand to really start the business and do it the right way. Yeah. So they're immediately in an existential crisis. And so they can't. I mean, the reality is, sadly, most small businesses are going to fail. And the reason they fail is numerous, but one of the reasons is because they don't put enough money set aside to give them an on-ramp to really get the business going the way they want it to. So they have to work with everybody. They have to take on any type of a project, just to get a customer. So given the fact that that is the reality, sadly, I think you absolutely have to think about how are you going to get that customer to buy from you again? Immediately before you even walk in the door to fix a toilet that's overflowing, you better have a strategy. How are you going to get them to spend money with you again? Are you going to get them to refer you to friends and family? You're going to have to build that on-ramp yourself, and you're going to have to do it with sweat equity and cash flow that you're able to generate as you're getting started. And it's a hard way to go. And the statistics are frightening when you see the number of small businesses that fail. So, but that is, unfortunately, that's the reality.
Yeah. One of the things that I I didn't share earlier that I think is important in that profitability kind of matrix is thinking about lifetime value of a client or customer. You talked about it, Ken, like how do you look longer term? How do you cross sell, upsell, make a longer term relationship than a one-off? And I think that's a really important factor, not just to understand that there is this idea of lifetime value, and that if we retain these customers, it's to our benefit, but also to help track and define that over time. I think that's really important, right? Because a plumber, just using that example again, if they really want to focus on residential plumbing, but they know that in order to create a viable business, they need to have this layer of sustainability. Building relationships with other contractors is going to be key, right? Because they can help refer to you and start, you can start to prove yourself and builders, general contractors, all of those kind of things are really valuable because they already have your ideal customer and they're going to bridge the gap between you. But yeah, it's definitely something you need to focus on for sure.
And even if you don't have the money to spend on a full-blown marketing strategy, because it done right, it's not inexpensive. I mean, we're talking thousands of dollars. At least work with a marketing strategy person to get that initial plan, to give yourself that runway, that the 2 or 3 most important tactics that are designed to take you to where you can do the full-blown strategy. Again, I'm not recommending that, but the reality is existentially 90% of all small businesses are probably in that mode, sadly, because they didn't borrow enough money to set aside for properly marketing their business. The other thing is, I think it's critical, and Ian, I think you kind of mentioned this or alluded to it a little bit. Your product mix is absolutely critical. You've got to think about, the easiest piece of business for you to win may be your least profitable. But if that's what's going to help you get customers, and then you look at the lifetime value of a customer, so that initial transaction might be $75, but a lifetime value of a customer turns into $10,000. Think about that. It's not just going to happen by chance. You have to design it. You have to come up with a plan to make that happen. And that plan is to build a marketing strategy and put in place all of the right set of marketing tactics to execute on that strategy. So, but again, there are some things that you do, maybe you just should walk away, because it's going to suck the lifeblood out of your business and you'll never have a chance to get ahead. So I think you've got to really spend time and look at every product or service that you offer and deliver. You talked about it, Ian. What is the profitability? Some of them are going to be point tactically driven solutions, unfortunately. Others might be that you can bundle, and even though one component of that business may not be very profitable, the overall project that you're doing is very profitable. You've got to think through all of this stuff, and this is only done when you're doing marketing strategy.
Yeah, and a lot of times with a lot of small businesses and startups, marketing can, like you said, marketing is almost an afterthought. They don't set aside a budget for it, and it comes down to you start a business. How are you going to get customers? You have to have customers.
Right. Yeah. Just because you hang up a shingle doesn't mean you're going to get customers.
If you build it, they probably won't come.
If they can't find you.
Right.
So, Ken, Ian mentioned this, talked about buyer personas.
Yeah.
And that's something a lot of small businesses probably don't know about. So, like, what is that? Why is it important? And how many should you have?
Well, I think Ian answered a lot of this. I think you should start out with, no more than three. And really it's a way to describe who your ideal clients are and put some meat onto the bones. And honestly, by going through this exercise, it forces you and challenges you to say, yeah, you're right. This isn't the right person. But what a marketing or a buyer persona is going to allow you to do is, you're going to be able to identify based on, demographic information, socioeconomic information, things like that. Then now you can start to infer and even have ideally have research backed support for this. Where are they spending time? Do they like to get a postcard in the mail? Are they a TikTok or an Instagram user? What problems do they have? These are the critical things. What problems do they have? What just because they have a problem, not all problems mean that they're going to be immediately taking action. So how do you identify that and really pencil it in? And I think Ian pretty much answered the rest of it. I think it's, as much as anything, it's the importance of doing the exercise and doing the research and putting in the work and challenging yourself to realize, yeah, I shouldn't be selling to just anyone and everyone.
So, Ian, we talk about in the strategy first approach about stories and the story of the business, and we talk about story brand. And so, why are these things important? And when you're talking about like a business, is it just, gee, I was going to college for something and I realized I want to do something else, so I started a business? I mean, how involved should the story be? How do you present that, lay that out? How do you go about developing that?
Yeah, and I think what you're talking about there, Paul, is kind of your origin story, right?
Right.
And I'll start with that, but I'll also share some other types of stories that I think can be really valuable for a business. First of all, the reason why you want to use stories is stories are captivating, right? We've all been around, whether it's a campfire or somebody reading a book to us as a kid, whatever it is, whether it's going to the movies, right? We love stories. As humans, we gravitate to stories. They engage us. They capture our attention and keep our attention. And they help us remember things in a way that just feeding bullet points to somebody isn't going to do. So stories are really, really powerful. Donald Miller, who we've talked about a little bit, wrote a great book called Story Brand. And it is a fantastic framework to take the most popular framework in Hollywood movies that capture our attention, engage us, and really get us involved, and utilize that for a business. So strongly recommend that. I think Ken's actually, I see the book behind you, Ken. Great book. Building a story brand. So
and we've had JJ on this podcast.
That's right.
Before.
That's right. So origin stories are really powerful too, because what they do is they help create a connection between the visitor, the prospect, and the customer, and you as the business owner, or the business as a whole. And why it's so important is because most often, yes, businesses are often created as a way to create sustainable income for the individual. That's not really sexy. That's not really exciting. But there's usually other reasons. And sometimes they could be a secondary reason to what I just shared there. But if you have, I can speak to this, my origin story with outsourced marketing and Dental Marketing Heroes was, first of all, I needed to provide for my family. That, I think most people get that one. That's not, again, not really the big story that you want to share with people, but we all get it. The side to the story of my origin story, though, is that I saw a huge need in the marketplace where strategy and tactics were not being utilized by small businesses. That, just as we're talking about today, there was this gap, and most people were investing in tactics and not seeing great results. They didn't have an overarching strategy. And so that was a driving part of my origin story. And it continues to be what drives us, because we want to produce real, tangible, sustainable results for small businesses, whether they're in the dental industry or outside of that industry. And I think you guys would share something similar. But your story is unique too, right? So I think origin stories, first of all, create authenticity. They bridge that gap, and they help people understand that there are motives for you doing what you do that are elevated to a higher level. And people care about that. As I said, it builds trust, authenticity. It differentiates you from the competitors, right? That's important too. It humanizes your brand. It creates a stronger brand identity. As I said, it engages people. It provides context and meaning to people. Like, oh, so, you're a little bit different because you started it to solve this problem that I'm feeling, right? So you create resonance right away. And it can even spark word of mouth marketing, because when people feel a connection with a business and why you started the business, and that you're unique in how you're doing that, then that can, people want to share that with others. And it enhances how you share your story as a business through all of the different mediums. And so there's even been, like, this is such a powerful concept, this origin story idea, that there are businesses out there that have wanted this, but their origin story stunk. So they've created a fictitious origin story, which, it was a great story. It was, kind of like the Bill Gates garage, starting in a garage, or Steve Jobs starting in a garage kind of story. But then the truth came out, and then it totally blew away the authenticity, the authenticity part. So make sure it's real. If you don't have a great origin story, don't lie, don't make one up. But just to add a few more other types of stories that I think businesses should be using, customer success stories, right? The case studies. These are really, really powerful, because it's less about you talking about how great you are and actually showing, whether it's through the voice of the customer or sharing, here was the unique challenge and here's how we solved that for them. It can create resonance and relevance with somebody right away. Behind the scenes stories, people really like these. Like, if you're a business and you support an animal shelter, or you have dogs in your office, like, I can't believe how much people love that stuff. They really love it. And if you can show how your team interacts to help your customers, that can be really powerful. Employee stories, like, if you're trying to build an attractive brand that attracts future employees, then you should be creating employee stories, the success of employees in your business, thought leadership stories, community engagement stories. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And if you've done something really innovative in your industry, do a product development story, because that can be really, really powerful. And sometimes these stories can get picked up by the press. Obviously, you can do activities related to press releases, but that can create greater exposure, create greater differentiation from your competitors, and it goes on and on. So lots of different types of stories you can share.
Yeah. I do want to jump in here, though. I mean, I agree with everything you said, Ian, but on your homepage,
yeah,
your story isn't about you. It's got to be about your customer. So everything that you talked about is critically important supporting information. but your story needs to be focused on your customer. They're the hero. They have a problem. They're looking for somebody who has a solution, who can call them to action, has the empathy and authority to say, hey, look, I've been there. I get it. Or I've guided people through this process numerous times to achieve an outcome and avoid, some kind of a failure. And it's all problem driven and it's clarity driven. So, unfortunately, most marketing people, they talk about somebody's brand story and that's where they stop. And that's a mistake.
I'm so glad you added that, Ken. I think that's so vital. Yeah, it's not about you. It's about the people, those, we were talking about how to find your ideal customers. It's about those guys. It's not about you.
Yeah.
So, stop talking about you.
And that translates to the language that you use on your website. We talked about tuck pointing. I still can never remember what tuck pointing is. But if all you ever talk about on your website is I do tuck pointing this, and here's why I do tuck pointing, and blah, blah, blah. I mean, I'm never going to find you because I'm not going to do a search for tuck pointing. I'm going to do a search for, I think it's cracked concrete or brickwork that needs to be
mortar or something,
crumbling mortar or brickwork or something like that. That I'm going to describe the problem that I have in a search engine. And then I'm going to click through the search results that seem like they can answer the mail based on the problem that I described. So make sure you're not falling into the trap of using a lot of gobbledygook, as David Meerman Scott talked about, on your website. Don't get that super technical language. And by technical, I don't mean computer skills or this or that. I mean the industry specific language, the acronyms. Use the language that your customers are using.
Yeah. And another thing about stories too, Ken, just, as you were talking about that, just, people should be thinking, like, we're kind of talking copy content on your website, right?
Right.
But video, super powerful way to share stories.
Yeah.
So don't forget about leveraging video, which of course can be, converted into copy content later on. But yeah. And of course, video bridges an authenticity and resonance gap with people right away. So
yeah.
Yeah, and follow up on something Ken said, and Ian, you mentioned earlier, is, talk to your existing customers or talk to friends, say, hey, look, if you had this problem, and this goes back to the industry jargon that people put on their websites, if you had this problem, how would you go about searching for that? Because that's what people are going to look for. Like Ken said, they don't know your industry specific jargon, so to speak. They're not going to use the same words, or most likely they're not going to use the same words and terminology that you would use because they don't know that industry. So, but I wanted to throw this one out to both of you because we could probably have 3 podcasts on this topic, this whole strategy first topic, but how does all of this relate to a content plan? So Ken, start with you.
Okay. Yeah. So we talked about the buyer's journey, is what some people call it, marketing hourglass, where know, like, trust, try, buy, repeat, and refer. You based on your strategy, who your ideal customers are, your core messaging, the stories that you have identified of transformation, because you want to help your customer visualize, here's where I'm at today, here's the issue or the problem I'm having, where they want to get to. Give them that visual, story to help with that transformation. So that's going to give you all kinds of ideas on what content you need to build throughout the buyer's journey. And so I'm going to talk about the marketing hourglass, and in the know phase, maybe they need to, understand how you solve their problem, through the homepage copy that you've created, and maybe your origin story. Maybe they find that and they start to know about you because of a press release that was done or something like that. how are they going to start to like and trust you? So maybe showing up on social media, in their news feeds, or getting people to subscribe to, email newsletter or video channel, YouTube channel, for example, so that they start to know you and like you. And that content's got to be designed to get them to trust you, to the point where they're ready to say, okay, you know what? I'm going to try these guys. And so maybe give them an easy on ramp to make that happen, to remove the barrier of obstacle of asking somebody to write, a large check, just to get the experience of what it's like to work with you. And it doesn't even have to be a check. It could literally be signing up for some valuable resource that just they get from your website, and they immediately can apply that and solve a problem. That's going to give them an idea of what it's going to be like to work with you. And then, what content do you need to get them to make a purchase, to refer you, to write a review about your business, to come back and buy again? So you want to map all this kind of stuff out, and this is fundamentally part of, the marketing strategy process that you go through.
So, Ian, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I loved what you said, Ken. The one thing I would add for people that's core to strategy, core for the content plan, is, to me, you have kind of two feeders into your content plan. You have the marketing hourglass that you shared about. And then I would say SEO keyword research is way, way up there as well, because the SEO keyword research is all about the attraction, but it's also about engagement and conversion, right? So in order to get people to your website, you need to understand what they're searching for related to your products and services. And so that SEO keyword research will help you define, from a search volume standpoint, here's the most relevant things people are searching for related to my product or service. So we need to build out content for that. Sometimes it's super, super simple, because it's like, you have to be talking about the services you're delivering. Because if you're not talking about them on your website, people won't be able to find them when they Google search you, right? Right. The other part of that is creating a hub page plan, because once you have your keyword research, it can be a topical content plan where you say, okay, we're going to cover these topics throughout this coming year, and there's going to be these subtopics. But also taking that and doing a hub page plan where you're saying, what would it take? What content do we need to develop from a planning standpoint that will help us build out the ultimate guide to dental implants, right? If that's a really high value product that you want to sell or service, then then you need to do that. And then the last piece, so those are the first two. The last piece I would say is frequently asked questions. Like, you as a business owner should know what frequently asked questions people are asking about your products and service and business, and the process that you use. Because if people are asking about them, chances are they showed up in your keyword research as well, because if your customers are asking about them, the general public are probably asking about them. But creating content and working FAQs into your plan and answering those common questions, especially ones that have a high buyer intent, those types of questions can be really, really powerful for guiding you in what content to produce. And I think this kind of circles back to that little story I was sharing about, business owners I know who have gravitated so far because of what they've heard about the buzz of ChatGPT, and they're just like, I don't need you guys to produce content anymore because ChatGPT can do it for me. But what's the plan? What content are you going to be producing? What questions are you going to be answering? Is it going to help you in any way with the buyer's journey, or with attracting people through organic search, or helping them through the phases, right? So I think those are so important to be asking yourself and using your strategy as a guide to get you there.
Yeah. I mean, Ian, I'm sure you run into this all the time. I know we do. People they have a hard time creating content. They don't know what content to put on their website. So having a content theme strategy where, it's like, this month we're going to be focused on this, the next month, and it doesn't have to be 12 unique. It could be a cycle. You could do 4 and then circle back and do the 4 again and repeat, and just keep hammering those home if you have 4 key things that you want to focus on. But I think having, that content theme piece in place, and you kind of talked about that, I think is really important. The other thing I want to mention is, the should ask questions. Frequently asked questions are great because that's what's going to get people onto your website. Probably the should ask questions might be those things that help people say, these people really get me. Here's the problem, but I didn't even think about that. My gosh, I need to talk to these guys because I would have run into this buzzsaw if I wouldn't have thought about that. So the should ask questions are also a really important thing.
Yeah, and Ian, you mentioned about the Chat GPT or the AI generated content. You can't just use AI to generate content and slap it on your website. Google's algorithm can actually detect that. It has to be reviewed and edited by a real person.
Humanized.
Yes, it can still be a great starting point, but if you just use AI to generate content and stick that on your website, Google can detect that. But we're coming up on an hour. I think this is a good place to wrap up. Ken, Ian, thanks for sharing your thoughts on this topic. And Ian, you want to take us out to our outro?
Sure. So check out that book that Ken's holding up. It's a good book that he and I and a bunch of other marketing consultants put together. Again, Donald Miller's books are fantastic. John Jance's books are fantastic. So educate yourself. And thanks for being here today. Thanks for spending some of your valuable time listening to us. I hope you got a lot of value out of this. Please share it with other people. We would love to have more and more people be able to leverage our experience and our knowledge that we're sharing. So please share. And until next week, keep calm and market on.